Some KLR650 model years are nearly impossible to beat. Bikes that have crossed continents, survived crashes, and racked up 100,000 miles with little more than oil changes and routine servicing. Other years carry mechanical risks that quietly turn a legendary dual sport into a frustrating and expensive lesson for frustrated riders. After digging through years of changes, long-term owner patterns, no mechanical weak points, and redesign transitions, we're going to show you the Kawasaki KLR650 years to avoid, and the years that truly last forever. Please watch the video until the end, because the number one KLR on this list is the most dependable used KLR650 you can buy right now, and one of the higher risk years still sells extremely well despite its many issues. Let's start with the KLR650 years to avoid. Number 4. 1987 KLR650. The 1987 KLR650 wasn't just a new motorcycle. It was the beginning of a legend. But first-year machines almost always carry exposure, and the very first KLR650 was no exception. When Kawasaki introduced the KLR650 in 1987, it brought a large displacement single-cylinder dual sport to a market that wasn't fully sure what to do with it yet. The 651cc liquid-cooled thumper was simple, torquey, and built with adventure in mind, but early production years often reveal weaknesses that only time and mileage can uncover. One of the most discussed components in KLR history traces back to these early years: the balancer chain tensioner lever, commonly known in owner circles as the doohickey. The original design used a stamped steel lever and spring system that, in some cases, could lose tension or fail to maintain proper adjustment of the balancer chain. When that happens, vibration increases, and in extreme situations, internal engine damage can follow. Not every 1987 bike failed. Many ran for years without issue, but the design itself created a known weak point that would follow the KLR's reputation for decades. And because this is a purely mechanical component buried inside the engine case, failure isn't cosmetic. Repair requires mechanical competence and time. Beyond the balancer tensioner, early production tolerances and assembly refinement were still maturing. Carburation required proper tuning. Fasteners needed regular inspection. Early electrical components were not as weather-resistant as later revisions. None of this makes the 1987 KLR650 unreliable. It makes it a first-year platform still finding its footing. When manufacturers introduce a new engine architecture, real-world riding exposes what lab testing cannot. Weak springs get revised, components get strengthened, quiet updates get rolled in. Buy a well-maintained 1987 with documented upgrades, especially a proper address balancer system, and it can still deliver impressive longevity. Buy one untouched and assume the legend protects it, and you may learn why early production years always carry risk. And as we move forward, the next window introduces a far more controversial issue, one that split the KLR community in half. Number 3. 2008 KLR650. The 2008 KLR650 wasn't a small update. It was a major redesign. Kawasaki revised the bodywork, upgraded the front suspension, added a larger front brake rotor, improved wind protection, and modernized the look. On paper, it was everything KLR riders had been asking for. But major redesign years almost always carry exposure, and 2008 became one of the most debated KLR years ever built. The issue wasn't electronics, it wasn't complexity, it was oil consumption. Shortly after the Gen 2 launch, reports began surfacing of excessive oil burning on some 2008 models. In certain cases, owners noticed significant oil usage between changes, sometimes far more than expected for a large single-cylinder engine. The cause centered around piston ring tolerances and cylinder finishing during early production. Not every 2008 burned oil. Many ran perfectly. But enough units did that the issue became widely discussed across forums, ride reports, and mechanic circles. And here's the problem with oil consumption on a KLR. This is an engine that already runs at sustained RPM on highways, often fully loaded. If oil levels drop too low and goes unnoticed, internal wear accelerates quickly. A simple oversight can turn into top-end damage. Kawasaki made quiet improvements in later production, but 2008 remains the highest exposure year of the second generation. Add to the fact that the balancer tensioner design was still unchanged, meaning the doohickey conversation never went away, and you have a first-year redesign that carried both old and new concerns at the same time. None of this means every 2008 KLR650 is problematic. It means this year sits squarely in the highest risk window of the Gen 2 platform. If you've owned a 2008 KLR, I want to hear from you. Did it burn oil? Did it run flawlessly? How many miles did you put on it? Drop your experience in the comments, because real-world data tells the story better than any spec sheet ever could. Now let's move to the carryover year that didn't fully escape the controversy. Number 2. 2009 KLR650. By 2009, the expectation was simple. The 2008 redesign issues would be behind it. But transitions don't always end in a single production year. While Kawasaki made internal adjustments following early oil consumption reports, the 2009 KLR650 still sits inside the highest exposure window of the second generation. Some units benefited from updated piston rings and cylinder finishing processes. Others did not. And that's the problem. When a platform has a documented mechanical concern in its launch year, the carryover year becomes a gray zone. You're no longer dealing with a pure first-year gamble, but you're also not yet in a fully stabilized production run. Oil consumption remained the defining conversation around certain 2009 bikes. Again, not every unit burned oil. Many ran flawlessly, but enough did that buyers began paying closer attention to service history, compression tests, and oil level habits before committing. On a carbureted large displacement single-cylinder engine, moderate oil use is not uncommon. But excessive consumption, especially during sustained highway travel, can become expensive if neglected. Top-end repairs on a KLR are not complex compared to multi-cylinder engines, but they are still time-consuming and not free. Add to that the unchanged balancer chain tensioner design, the doohickey remained a required upgrade in the eyes of many owners, and 2009 continues to carry both inherited and redesign era risk. None of this makes the 2009 KLR650 unreliable. It makes it transitional. When production corrections are rolling in quietly behind the scenes, consistency hasn't fully returned yet. If you're shopping in this window, documentation matters, oil consumption history matters, mechanical upgrades matter. Because once the platform stabilizes, it becomes one of the most dependable dual sports ever built, and that stability shows up clearly in the next stretch of years. Number 1. 2022 KLR650. History tends to repeat itself, and 2022 proved it. After being discontinued in 2018, the KLR650 returned with a completely revised platform, new fuel injection replacing the long-running carburetor, updated bodywork, revised subframe, new electronics package, ABS options, digital instrumentation. On paper, it was everything the KLR needed to survive modern emission standards and remain competitive. But first-year redesigns always carry exposure. The 2022 KLR650 marked the first time this engine platform relied on electronic fuel injection. For decades, the carbureted KLR earned its reputation for simplicity. You could clean it on the side of a trail. You could diagnose it with basic tools. Fuel injection changes that equation. When EFI works properly, it improves cold starts, throttle consistency, and altitude compensation. When sensors fail or connectors corrode, diagnosis becomes electronic rather than mechanical. You're no longer adjusting a mixture screw, you're tracing voltage signals. Early production runs also revealed minor fit and finish concerns, including fuel pump-related complaints and electrical gremlins reported by a small percentage of owners. Nothing catastrophic across the board, but enough to remind buyers that this was a fully modernized KLR entering a new era. The engine itself remained fundamentally the same 652cc single-cylinder architecture, and that is a strength. But the emissions tuning and leaner mapping introduced new operating characteristics compared to older carbureted models. None of this makes the 2022 KLR650 unreliable. It makes it the highest modern transition window. First year, new fueling system, new electronics exposure. As production stabilized and updates rolled in, the platform began proving itself. But if you want maximum mechanical simplicity, the 2022 model year carries the most first-year uncertainty. If you're enjoying this video so far, take a second to save this video so you can come back to it later. Subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with someone who's thinking about buying a KLR. And when you're done watching this one, head over to the main channel page and check out some of the other videos on other bikes you might be considering. And now it's time to pivot, because when the KLR650 stops reinventing itself, it becomes one of the hardest motorcycles on the planet to kill. Number 4. 1993 to 1995 KLR650. Before the KLR650 became a global legend, it had to grow into itself. By the early 1990s, Kawasaki had already worked through the rough edges of the original late 80s production years. Small revisions had been quietly introduced, assembly consistency improved. Known weak points were better understood. What remained in 1993 through 1995 was a version of the KLR that had settled into its mechanical identity. The 651cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine in these years is simple and understressed. It doesn't chase high horsepower, it doesn't rev aggressively, it produces steady torque and operates comfortably within its design limits. That restraint matters. Engines that aren't constantly pushed toward peak output tend to accumulate miles without internal drama. Yes, the balancer chain tensioner lever, the doohickey, still existed in its original form, but by this point, awareness was growing. Owners began treating it as preventative maintenance rather than a surprise failure. Once properly addressed, the underlying engine architecture proved durable and predictable. These bikes are mechanically transparent. Carbureted fueling, minimal electronics, no ride modes, no sensor interpreting rider intent. Diagnosis is straightforward, repairs are accessible, electrical systems are basic and easier to trace than later generations. The frame is sturdy, the cooling system is uncomplicated, the suspension is simple but serviceable. Nothing about this era is flashy, and that's exactly why it lasts. Owners from this period routinely report high mileage with routine care, oil changes, valve inspections, chain service, and occasional bolt checks. Not exotic repairs, not catastrophic failures, just steady accumulation of miles. This window represents the KLR before weight gain, before emissions pressure, before modernization reshaped the formula. It's not the most refined era, it's not the most powerful, but it's one of the earliest stretches where the KLR began proving it could survive real-world abuse without falling apart. And from here, the legend only grows stronger. Number 3. 2023 to present KLR650. When the KLR650 returned in 2022, it stepped into unfamiliar territory. Fuel injection replaced the carburetor that had defined the platform for decades. ABS became standard on most trims. The electrical system expanded. Emissions compliance reshaped tuning. For many longtime KLR riders, the question wasn't excitement, it was trust. And in 2022, that trust was still forming. But by 2023, the hesitation began to fade. Production stabilized, early minor complaints were addressed. Dealers and independent mechanics became comfortable with the new fueling system. What initially felt like a major philosophical shift began proving itself as a practical evolution. The core of the motorcycle never changed. It remains the same 652cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder architecture that built the KLR's reputation in the first place. It still prioritizes low-end torque over peak horsepower. It still operates far from high-performance stress limits. It still values durability over speed. The difference is consistency. Fuel injection eliminates altitude rejetting. Cold starts are immediate. Throttle response is predictable across temperature changes. For riders who travel long distances or cross elevation regularly, that reliability matters. The updated frame and suspension tuning give the modern KLR a more planted highway feel than earlier generations. It is heavier, yes, but that weight translates into stability when loaded with luggage or pushing into crosswinds. Most importantly, by 2023 and beyond, the first-year uncertainty factor disappears. Software is stable, fuel delivery is refined, the platform is no longer experimental. Owners are beginning to log serious mileage without early adopter anxiety. This era represents the KLR adapting to modern regulations without abandoning its identity. It's not the lightest dual sport, it's not the fastest, but it's proving that even in a fuel-injected world, the KLR still understands durability. And as we move up this list, we return to the stretch of the years that truly cemented the legend. Number 2. 2010 to 2018 KLR650. By 2010, the noise had settled. The 2008 oil consumption controversy had forced scrutiny into the second-generation KLR650. Owners were watching closely, forums were loud, mechanics were cautious, and Kawasaki quietly made the internal corrections that the platform needed. What followed was nearly a decade of mechanical consistency. The 652cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine remained fundamentally unchanged. It wasn't redesigned, it wasn't overtuned, it continued doing what it had always done, producing usable torque at modest RPM without chasing performance numbers. That restraint is one of the reasons these engines last. They operate comfortably within their stress limits. Oil consumption complaints dropped significantly during the stretch when bikes were maintained properly. The piston ring tolerances that created uncertainty in early Gen 2 production were no longer a defining issue. What remained was predictability. Fueling stayed carbureted, which kept diagnosis simple. No sensors interpreting mixture. No electronic throttle bodies. If something ran poorly, you traced it mechanically. That simplicity is part of why long-distance riders continued trusting this platform. The balancer chain tensioner lever, the doohickey, was still part of ownership culture. But by this era, it was no longer controversial. It was preventative maintenance. Aftermarket upgrades were widely installed. Owners knew what to expect. Awareness reduces risk. These later Gen 2 bikes are heavier than Gen 1, but that weight adds highway stability when loaded with luggage or riding into crosswinds. The larger front brake and improved wind protection make them better long-distance tools than earlier versions. Owners routinely report 5- and 6-figure mileage from this window with routine care, oil changes, valve checks, chain service, and periodic bolt inspections. Nothing exotic, nothing fragile. This stretch represents the KLR after the learning curve. Not flashy, not delicate, not experimental, just consistent. And now we move to the era that truly built the reputation, the stretch that turned the KLR650 from a practical dual sport into a global legend. Number 1. 1996 to 2007 KLR650. This is the stretch that built the legend. From the mid-1990s through the final year of the first generation, the KLR650 stopped evolving and started proving itself. Kawasaki wasn't chasing performance, it wasn't redesigning the engine, it wasn't adding complexity. It was building the same mechanical formula year after year, refining it quietly through real-world use. The 651cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine in these years is simple, under-stressed, and remarkably tolerant. It doesn't produce impressive horsepower numbers, it doesn't demand high RPM, it delivers steady torque and spends most of its life operating comfortably within its limits. That mechanical restraint is one of the main reasons these bikes accumulate serious mileage. Carbureted fueling keeps the system straightforward. No ride-by-wire, no fuel maps adapting behind the scenes. If something needs attention, diagnosis is mechanical. That simplicity is part of why these bikes traveled across continents long before adventure touring became mainstream. Yes, the balancer chain tensioner lever, the doohickey, remained part of ownership, but by this era, it was well understood. Aftermarket upgrades were widely available. Once addressed, the underlying engine architecture proved durable and predictable over the long haul. These bikes are lighter than later Gen 2 models. They feel simpler, more direct. The frame is sturdy, the cooling system is uncomplicated, and the electrical system is minimal enough to troubleshoot on the side of a trail. Owners routinely report 5- and 6-figure mileage from this window with routine maintenance, oil changes, valve inspections, chain service, and basic bolt checks. Not exotic repairs, not expensive electronics, just steady accumulation of miles. This era is why the phrase KLRs don't die exists. Not because they're perfect, not because they're powerful, but because they're simple enough to survive. If you want the KLR650 that defined durable dual-sport travel for decades, this is it. This is the foundation the legend was built on. That's the Kawasaki KLR650 years to avoid and the years that truly last. If you're shopping for a KLR, this is the difference between buying into the legend and buying into someone else's mechanical oversight. If you enjoyed this video, save this so you can reference it later. Subscribe for other videos just like this, and share it with someone thinking about a KLR. And please visit the main channel page for breakdowns on other bikes you might be considering. See you in the next video.